This is now going to take you through the sugya about the Srikin. So here is our sugya broken down into 4 clearly separate lines. Rabbi Abahu's Memra, right, which is our, which begins, V'ha'anan Tnan, line from the Mishnah, that is V'ha, objecting, Ta'ama, this statement of the Gemara, whose role we will talk about, and then Ha-kamashmalan, another statement of the Gemara. So we have 2 sources, the initial Memra, and then a quote from our Mishnah, and 2 statements of the Gemara, playing out the conflict and the resolution. Now, the first 3 words I mentioned are the piska. They're just kind of locating us within the Mishnah. They are not part of the sugya at all, so do not read them as part of it. So the sugya starts with what I call the makor. Right? The makor means a statement that a source that is simply presenting a law that will then be the subject of the discussion. Right? Note that even though this is connected to this phrase of the Mishnah, the phrase from the Mishnah is not the starting point of the conversation. The Memra is. I put the Memra in green. We then have a kushya. We know it's kushya veha. We have this quote from the Mishnah in red. We then have this statement, which you'll notice I put as part of the kushya. We'll get to that in a second. And finally, a tirutz, a response to that kushya, at the end. Now, the makor is simple. The kushya, the Mishnah is, the problem is the conflict between the Memra and the Mishnah. But the question is, what's the status of this line? So the easiest way to first figure this out is, Ha-kamash malan down here is a terutz phrase. Given that, it is most likely that that's where the terutz begins. Meaning that this is part of the kushya. But further, once you look up this phrase, ta'ama de x, ha-lav x, is an explanatory phrase. It makes explicit an assumption or an inference that the Gemara wants to make from its source. How does this work? We're getting there. So, Rabbi Abahu says, Eino chayav ad, same form we've seen, yochal b'chavura shekula srikin, eats with a group of thugs, that were all thugs. V'ha'anantnan, but our Mishnah says, achal b'chavurat mitzvah, eino nasa ben umoreh. Right, he's patur if he eats with in a chavurat mitzvah. I actually just realized I shouldn't have put the only here, because all the Mishnah says is he is patur if he eats with a chavurat mitzvah. There's no obvious conflict there. That's where the explanation comes in. The Mishnah, that the Gemara is making an inference. When it says if he eats with a chavurat mitzvah he's patur, the reason he's patur is because it's chavurat mitzvah. Ta'ama de mitzvah. The reason is that it's a mitzvah. However, lav mitzvah. Again, you gotta fill it all in. If he's eating not in a chavurat mitzvah, then afal gav lav kol srikin, even if they're not all thugs, regardless of who the people there are, fill it in, he ought to be chayav. Right? So the Mishnah just said, if he eats in a chavurat mitzvah, he's patur. The Gemara wants to say, oh, that implies if he eats in a chavurat mitzvah, and only in that case is he patur. If it is not a chavurat mitzvah, or one of the other things listed in the Mishnah, he should be chayav regardless of who's there. Right? That's true here. There are 2 different standards. Is it about what kind of meal it was in the Mishnah? Or is it about who he's eating with, the Meimer? Now that was the Kushya, or the Hava Amina, what you would have thought. And now the resolution. Ha Kamash Malan. It comes to teach us. What comes to teach us? Well, clearly here we're talking about the Mishnah. The Mishnah isn't teaching us what we thought it meant was. It isn't teaching us that Chavarat Mitzvah is the only basis for exemption. It's actually presuming that you already know what Rabbi Abahu said, that they have to be, just like they have to have eaten meat and wine, and if not, everything else is irrelevant. So too, it has to be eaten with a group of thugs. And if not, then everything else is irrelevant. And on top of that, the Mishnah then comes to say, even if it is a group of thugs, if what you're doing is a mitzvah that, lo mimshich, he won't be drawn in, pulled into the bad behavior. Something about being engaged in this mitzvah keeps him from being pulled down the wrong path. So they're both true, but the resolution makes clear that one of them is primary and the other secondary. Right. First, it's got to be all thugs. And then the Mishnah comes on top of that to say, and even if they are all thugs, here's a further limitation. Mitzvah can override that. Now, let's just see quickly what Rashi has to tell us. Shukulas Srikin Reikim. And again, Rashi is drawing our attention to why the company of thugs should be relevant to this story. He says the reason the thugs are important is that Yargiluhu Bakach. They will get him used to this kind of behavior. Right? If our whole concern is this eating and drinking is going to be habit forming and lead him to addiction and lead him to a whole chain of bad behaviors, well, the bad company encourages it and leads him along that path. But, aval im yesh b'chavura, adam hagun, there's a good person. Really, one good person, right? B'chi ha'gavna lo mimshich. In such a case, b'chi ha'gavna lo mimshich. Again, he won't be drawn in. What's Rashi focusing on? Kula. Not just that he has to be among thugs, but it has to be all thugs. If there any one non-thug there can keep this kid who is still kind of on the fence from going down the rabbit hole. Now what's interesting is all of these thugs were not themselves stoned as Ben Surah Umoreh. Really here we are talking about the kid who is being drawn toward that behavioral path, but has not yet gotten fully drawn in. And the question is it too late to stop him?